My concern here with this legislation is that I feel that the recidivism that we're seeing and the lack of consequences at an early age is creating professional criminals for a lifetime. And in particular, what we're seeing is children at a younger age are committing more horrific crimes than you could ever imagine. In my town, we just had an unfortunate experience of a very prominent family that does a lot in our community. They operate a farm. They supplied many people with free produce through COVID when people couldn't get their foods. The family's been struck with a lot of tragedy. They've had a son that was killed in a motorcycle accident. The patriarch had cancer and passed away. And the family wrapped their arms around the grandson and was raising that child. Unfortunately, a couple weeks ago, he was stabbed by a middle schooler and killed on a playground. Now, it was really tough to take and difficult to hear that a 16-year-old was stabbed. And that poor child ran from the scene because he was with other teenagers. And rather staying there and trying to get help from them, I would guess that he may have ran away because there was nobody there that he could trust to help him. And that flight probably caused his demise, and sadly he passed away the next day in a hospital. That middle schooler is now probably going to be charged with murder and probably will have very little consequences to those actions because, after all, he's just a kid. He doesn't know any better. The frontal lobe isn't developed. But the thought that a child in the state of Connecticut could pick up a knife and stab another child on a playground and kill that child is overwhelming to me. I know that my children were raised to never do that. And when I was a kid and we had fights, we fought with our fists. We didn't pick up weapons. You know, and the other day we passed a law here dealing with gun reform that really went after law-abiding citizens. We really didn't do anything about the fact that children are being killed in the streets. In one of our cities, we had I think it was a 16-year-old that was shot and killed. And the police quickly came out to say, don't worry, it wasn't a random shooting, it was a targeted shooting. So therefore, the public doesn't need to worry. The profound thought that a 16-year-old was a target of violence, and therefore people in the city should feel safe because he was only the target, it wasn't random, is really profound to me. This stuff is disturbing. And this bill is disturbing to me because we don't have these difficult conversations of how we are going to cycle out of a criminal justice system that is ignoring this behavior, is not addressing it, and allowing these kids to repeat until they figured out that they could actually commit murder and get away with it. And so it's not even about breaking into vehicles anymore or stealing the change out of cars. Kids are dying. We hear from our teachers the behavioral issues in our schools. They're retiring. So what are we doing? We're putting more money into education, not necessarily to help the kids, but to help the needs of our teachers' unions who cry for more money and more time off because they're stressed out. And I understand that. I could appreciate their stress. But what's stressing me out is these children continue to be ignored. And I would suggest that the JJPOC has done nothing to help our children over the last 10 years. And rather than move food on the plate and pretend that we are actually doing something for our kids, we should be dissolving this commission and finding some other way to help our children. The thought that we have completely removed them from the adult system, which isn't perfect, is a problem to me. Because it wasn't long ago that we've seen tragedies like Sandy Hook. And I can't imagine if it's a 16-year-old that goes into a school and commits a violent crime among many kids, that individual isn't going to be incarcerated in an adult prison, in a secure prison. Because I have no confidence, based on where we've been before, that we are going to protect society from that type of violence through our judicial system. It wasn't done when we were finding out these children were being placed in group homes in DCF without the proper security. So I am going to stand a strong no on this legislation. And as we go home when session ends tomorrow, and we know the warm weather is going to be here, and the kids are going to be out of school and outside, and we are going to see the crime increase. And the residents are going to call you about the break-ins after break-ins. I hope to God those are the only phone calls we get. And I don't hear another phone call of another constituent of mine that have lost one of their children on a playground because we continue to not address juvenile violence and the victims that are impacted by it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.